Hello everybody, this is CJ Wiley with more adventures on the road. In my last video, I was talking about my first professional pool tournament in Toronto, Canada, and how that went down and how I learned the stance position that I ended up changing to, which was a life changer. I don't think there's any way I could have been as consistent on the professional tour as I was without changing that foundation. Remember, the key to any structure is the foundation. If it's off, the rest of the structure will be off. If it's inconsistent, so will the rest of the structure. So make sure your foundation is just right. And I have some instructional stuff that I show how the footwork is done, but that's another story. So when I got back home to Dallas, I was in high gear. I wanted to perfect this stance because I knew that as well as I was playing, if I could get into a position the same every time and go down like I'm shooting out of the center of my chest, that it was going to make a difference, and I may be able to reach my highest goal, which was to be the #1 player in the world, even if it was for a little while. I had a New York sports writer, Michael Geffner, do an article on me one time, and he asked me what my goal was, and I said, I want to be the #1 player in the world. He said, well, what then? And I said, I'll probably quit. he laughed. He said, what do you mean by that? I said, well, I want to get to the top of the mountain, but I don't want to live there. The hardest thing there is maintaining a #1 position. Shane Van Boening has all the respect for me in the world because he's done it for the last like 15, 20 years. That's amazing. What a work ethic. I never really had that. Plus I had a lot of other things that I did. And natural health was one of the main ones. So I went back to my house. I had a pool table, Gold Crown pool table, and started practicing the stance and how to go down on the ball. At first, I felt like I was too close to the ball, so I also did another video that showed what I can do when I choke up on the cue, because that's how I got over that feeling of being too close to the balls. I choked up as far as I could, and then when I got down, it made me closer to the ball, and my bridge length was shorter, and it was awkward. However, I did it about 20 or 30 minutes a day and ended up getting pretty good at it. And then when I went back to what was natural, everything just clicked. And all of a sudden, within 2 weeks, I was going down on the ball better than I ever had in my life. And my consistency level went way up. My top playing speed, you know, couldn't be enhanced that much, but the fact of the matter was I played like that all the time and really didn't have to practice near as much as the other players. My whole philosophy is it's not practice that makes perfect, it's perfect practice that makes perfect. And also, you know, working on your weaknesses until they become strengths. So that's what I do when I'm actually practicing. Anytime I don't make a shot, I quickly set it up again as closely as I can to where it was and shoot it again until I make it. Then I go to something else. I'm trying to program my mind that every single shot in that practice session, I made it, because the last memory will be your strongest. So that's a little tip that's very, very valuable. You'll see just about every top pro player do that if they're practicing seriously. We never want to not make a shot and then just let it go, because that leaves a bad imprint on our minds. So I basically made that stance position natural, and then I was getting down on the ball exactly the same every time. My distance to the ball was the same, and it's synchronized with my bridge length and where I held the cue. So my next professional tournament was in Reno, Nevada. Now this is leading into something that really changed my life in many ways, because the fact of the matter was I was having some health issues. I was a black belt in martial arts, but when I would push myself, my heart would start pounding, and that's a sign of poor circulation. Plus, I was having trouble with my eyes. I could tell that, you know, I was not going to be able to see as well. And if I was going to be the #1 player in the world, I better hurry up and do it. So I went to Reno to the Sands Regency Classic. We had 2 tournaments there a year. I think it was June and December. So basically every 6 months we would have a tournament at the Sands Regency. And it was an awesome tournament. Just about all the best players in the world will be there. Plus there was an amateur tournament going there at the same time. So there was lots of people, lots of fans. And the professionals played in a pretty small room. It was like 8 tables, Brunswick Gold Crowns, lined up in a line. Plenty of room between the tables. And a seating area that probably 200 people would fill the room. And a lot of times it was pretty full, especially as it got down closer to the finals of the tournament. So I went in there, and the casino was really nice. It is not a place I like to hang out a lot, casinos. I was always taught that they're the professionals. You know, anybody that'll challenge the world, that's what we used to say about poker machines. Anything that's got its back up against the wall, challenging the world, leave it alone. That's too much confidence. So I feel the same way about casinos, but I grew to love this casino because it was laid out so well. It was an older casino, but there was plenty to do around Reno. We would go over to the other side of the mountain to Lake Tahoe, and I've driven around that lake a few times. It's beautiful country. And in the winter, they had skiing there, and in the summer, you know, it was great hiking weather. I always liked to get outside and do things when I was at professional tournaments. A lot of times we all played golf together. And so I ended up playing a couple rounds and then faced Johnny Archer. Johnny and I go way back. I have a lot of respect for Johnny. He's went through, you know, a lot of the same stuff that I have, coming from a very small town in southern Georgia. I played him the first time when he was, I think, 13 and I was 17. And I went there, and his mentor was Chester. And I remember they matched up a game for us. I think I gave him the 7-ball at that time. However, with 4-year difference, I was playing a level that would be very difficult for a 13-year-old to play. But Johnny was a great player at that age. And I think I edged him out in that match, but that's not a big deal. That's just when we met. But we'd gambled several times since then. And I've hit some of my strongest gears against Johnny Archer. I had to. He's beat pretty much everybody he's played gambling. Even Bustamante, there's a story where he ran 15 racks in a row on Bustamante, and then Bustamante asked him to raise the bet. That's a really good story, but you know, at our level, if somebody runs 15 or plays at that level for you know, an hour or so, you can't maintain that. I mean, everything has to balance. So if you hit a super high gear like that and everything is going right, you know, with the break and everything, there's going to be a period that's going to equal that out, where you start breaking and get funny kisses and, you know, can't get on the 1 ball, and that's just the nature of the game. It goes in cycles. So I happened to win against Johnny Archer. Then I played Nick Varner, and Nick is a player that I never really enjoyed playing because he's so intense. He plays every shot with everything he has. And I'm more of a freewheeler. You know, my rhythm is the key to my game. And Nick knows so much about pool because he's a master straight pool player. He's an awesome one-pocket player. Plays all games, I think, at a high level. So he definitely had a lot more knowledge than I did at the time. However, I had that high gear, that gambling gear, that enabled me to run a lot of racks. So I could barrage anybody at any time. So I ended up edging Nick out. And then I played Steve Mizerak. Steve Mizerak was like a childhood idol for me. And I've told stories where I got kicked off the basketball team because I went to see Steve Mizerak in Quincy, Illinois, do a exhibition, and I went over there and missed a practice in a game, and the coach kicked me off the basketball team. I remember I said, "Coach, that's okay. I'm never going to be an NBA basketball player, but someday I'm going to be a professional pool player, and I'm going to beat that Steve Mizerak." Which he just scoffed and told me to get out of his office. That actually helped me, though. The haters that tell you you can't do anything, and we call them beta or gamma males, where they think that they should be the center of attention and they should be where other men are. So instead of trying to build them up and themselves, it's like they want to tear everybody down so they'll be taller in comparison, so to speak. That's not a good way to live, and you're never going to reach your highest potential doing that. You always want to seek to help other people, and I don't even wish bad rolls on my opponent. When I'm playing, if I catch myself rooting for the guy to get a bad roll or miss a ball, I will change that as quick as I can, because when you start wishing those things on other people, you'll find that it comes right back on yourself. Life, a lot of ways, is a mirror. So, what you project out here also comes within. They call it projection, and there's a lot of books written about that subject. But the main key is wish for your opponent to play the best they can. Then you feel better about winning anyway. I've never felt really good about winning a match where my opponent played bad. I want both of us to play the best we can, and me to be able to pull it out, or them pull it out. The fact of the matter is, that's how you're going to master not only the game but yourself. And it's a good way to practice it in pool. That's why the game is the teacher. A lot of things that I do in pool, I can build a bridge to my regular life and do things a lot better, because I have a referential index, a reference to pool for a lot of things. It's amazing what you can learn from being around pool and the pool rooms and the game itself. So after I beat Steve Mizerak, I ran the last rack in about a minute, and AccuStats Pat Fleming told me that it was the best-selling video of the year that year for them. So if you haven't seen that, I wish he would upload that to YouTube, because it's been on before, but they've taken it down. So I'm not sure why he doesn't show that match. That's one of the best matches that he's ever had, I guess. And plus, everybody loves Steve Mizerak, and I was the young gun on the scene. It was my first professional tournament in the United States. I played a lot of other tournaments, but not full-fledged tournaments against the likes of Steve Mizerak and Earl Strickland and Efren Reyes, and Nick Varner, Johnny Archer, Alan Hopkins. The list goes on and on. They were all super tough players. So after I won that match with Steve Mizerak, I ran into this lady named Rebecca, who was from Phoenix, and she was with the Longevity Society. That's the top 30 naturalistic doctors in the world. And there was a nuclear physicist and microbiologist that was basically the head of the organization, and they had other ones like Dr. John Coleman that wrote some well-known books like The Committee of 300. And I ended up going out to lunch with her, and she told me that they had these products that they would like to test on me, basically, but there was no side effects and it was completely natural. But what they were going to do is take the highest level, and I'm going to just say this in simple terms, the highest level of the shark's immune system, and inject it into my body. And the way that the immune system works and the body fights off disease, and bacteria and fungus and parasites is by frequency. Our bodies register at a certain frequency. When something foreign comes in, our bodies will create what's necessary to fight off the toxicity. It's usually some type of toxicity. And when we get sick, it's a natural thing that gets that toxicity out of us, if it builds up enough, because if we didn't have that, none of us would be able to live that long, because the toxicity would just mount up until, we couldn't survive. So I look at getting sick as actually a positive thing. Now, even with my background in naturalistic medicine, I was doing herbs and a lot of holistic stuff at the time through my martial arts teacher, who was an authority on those type of things. But it really just wasn't working that well. A little bit, but it wasn't going to make any significant changes. So I talked to her for a little bit more and got the details, which in person I would share this stuff. On this platform, I can't. There's certain words that I'm just not going to be able to say. So, if you know me personally, I'll share anything at any time. And I have through the years. It's just amazing that very few people will try natural stuff. And I'm living testament that they work. That's the only thing that I've done throughout my life is natural cleanses. And I've been to the doctor. I got stabbed twice. They saved my life. So I have nothing against doctors, or I just don't like the pharmaceuticals that are toxic. Because if they can't poison it or cut it or burn it, that's about the limit of the treatment. So I'm always a big fan of the natural way, but I'd never heard about anything like this, and neither has hardly anybody else, because it's not allowed in this country. You got to go outside the country to do it, or have somebody bring it in. You can legally bring it in with an FDA permit. So I went to Phoenix and met with Rebecca, and she'd had some liver problems. So when we did this first shot, we did 1/10 of a cc. That's what I did. I think she did 1/2 a cc. Because you start out, pretty minor to see what it'll do to your body. So we had a nurse come by to do the injections. I hate needles, so anything that has to do with sticking a needle in my arm, I'm out on that. So I can't even watch. I got a little bit better at it, but I think my mother instilled that in me so I would never be a junkie. So I never had any. That's one thing I've never done, and I can't be around people that do that. It makes me queasy. So the nurse did the injections, and I remember we're sitting there on her couch. She had a couch that went around like a U-shaped couch, and she was sitting on the other side. And exactly an hour after you administer this stuff, you'll get the effects. And it's like getting the flu. You'll get a chill and shake. Your temperature will go up to 102. My teeth would chatter. And on that particular night, it felt like it was tickling me. Like I was being roto-rootered all the way, and I think it was clearing out my veins and arteries. I mean, in fact, I'm sure of it now. And I was kind of laughing. And I looked over at Rebecca, and she was not laughing, and she was in pain, and she asked me how I felt, and I said, I feel like I'm being tickled. And she said, I wish I felt like that. She lifted up her shirt, and her stomach was like bright red. And she ended up going to the bathroom and was throwing up, and I felt like I was just being, like everything was tingling, and it was a wild experience. But after about an hour, hour and a half, it started to go away and then went completely away after a couple hours. So it was wild doing this. And I didn't, I had nobody to ask about it. So how I really got up my courage to do it was I met this yogi that was in town. He was in Phoenix, and he was a tennis instructor. Just like I play pool to make extra money and pay my expenses, he did it with tennis. But he was from South America, and he was down there with a tribe that had a timekeeper. And he told me that timekeeper was 127 years old. The timekeeper records the history, like they do everything orally. They don't write a lot of stuff down. And this has been a tradition for, many, many years, if not like centuries. And the timekeeper will get all the best food and the best, herbal medicine and everything. He gets the finest of everything because they're trying to keep him alive as long as possible, because he's also training other ones to come up to take his place. So I played tennis with this yogi. He was 72 years old. He was tall. He was a little taller than me, 6'2". I'm 6 foot. In really good shape. And he sure didn't look 72. His skin was like a 26-year-old. And I was in really good shape because I was a black belt. Like I said, I was having a little bit of trouble with that heart, but for the most part, I was in really good shape. Well, he wore me out after about 2 hours. And then we were at a school, and there was a quarter-mile track beside us. So he went over and frog jumped around that quarter-mile track, which means you jump like a frog, keep your feet as close to the ground as possible, and you jump as far as you can every time, and just keep doing that. It's brutal, especially to do it a quarter of a mile after he wore me out. So that's really when I started to get enthused about this treatment, because he was up there to get it for the timekeeper, and he did. He told me he'd done about 3 vials of it. Because I ended up buying, I could buy a vial of it in Mexico for $700. And, but that's future pacing myself, because I did all my treatments in Phoenix. And then I started bringing some back to a doctor that was in Dallas. And he was treating people with all kinds of chronic diseases. This works on everything. And it's a combination of this shark chondriana and this other thing called life crystals. So the combination is what's so strong. So after doing about 5 or 6 of these treatments, I was at a tournament in Los Angeles, and that's the first time that I really saw the results, because I was out playing tennis with Earl Strickland. Earl plays pretty good tennis. I was a tournament tennis player when I was young, so, I played, I had beat some national ranked players, ones that were in the top 10 in the country. So I could play tennis really well at one time. So we went out and played, and it was about 98 degrees, and on the tennis court, it's a lot hotter than that because of the concrete and everything. So we were running around hitting balls back and forth, and right when my heart would start to pound like it usually does, it would like downshift, and it wouldn't pound. Just like a car. When it started revving up, then it would downshift. If I kept going and it started revving up again, it would downshift again. That was impressive. And what was really impressive on top of that was my sweat was cold. So not only could I run around and my heart not pound, but my sweat was so cold that it kept me, I didn't even feel like I was hot. And Earl was dripping with sweat, and he was pretty messed up. I think he'd flown in from like Hong Kong or something. So he was a little physically worn down anyway, because he's in really good shape. I respect that about Earl, and I think that's mutual. He always liked pool to be an athletic sport, and Earl and I were two of the best athletes. We played, you know, tennis together, but a lot of golf together. Johnny Archer and Kim Davenport, and who else was it? Alan Hopkins was a pretty good golfer and liked to gamble. Alan's a great gambler. He's one of those guys that I always kind of stayed away from, because he's tricky. He knows all kinds of proposition bets. There probably isn't a whole lot of people that know more about pool than Alan Hopkins. And he also will bet the money. I mean, he'll put up, I've seen him bet a lot on, especially his one pocket game. He played, I don't think Efren could have went to New Jersey and played him in his own pool room and won. I know he never did. So he played that level that Efren didn't want to play him. Although Efren, you know, he got a lot better, and on a neutral court, he was probably the favorite. But guys like Buddy Hall and Alan Hopkins played incredible one pocket. They just never made a mistake and were super sharp. So I started reaping the rewards of this treatment. After I played tennis, I ended up doing really well in that tournament. I think I got third. It seems like Earl beat me to play Johnny Archer. That was my first ESPN tournament, I think. And Earl beat me Hill, and then he beat Johnny Hill. And both matches, in the middle of the match, he missed a ball and lucked it in and continued to run out. And that was really the difference. He did it on me in the middle of the set, and then I watched him do it on Johnny in the middle of the set. So there is luck involved in this pool, no matter what level you're at, especially the break. If somebody that's a high-level player is breaking and making a ball and getting on the one every time, it's a joke. Just like they play together, you know, today, they've mastered it where they make the corner ball every time and just play shape on the one. I mean, we would have never allowed that in our time. As far as guys like Alan Hopkins and Nick Varner, we always tried to stop the corner ball, because ideally we didn't want people to make balls on the break very often. Even the best breakers at that time were only making balls 70% of the time. David Howard was one of them, Wade Crane. You know, I think I made balls on the break, you know, about 67% of the time or something, because, you know, we racked for each other, so we didn't allow that corner ball to go. And as long as nobody got slugged, it worked fine, racking for each other. And if somebody slugged you, you would probably say something to them or give them that look, and then start checking the rack a little bit. You had to communicate to them not to do that, because if they keep doing that, you can't play, and you have to, you know, be pretty stern with them. I really haven't had trouble like that. I've been slugged, but just like one game in a tournament, once in a while it would happen. But it's part of it. So my heartbeat was so much better. When I went back to train in my martial arts, I go through these real strenuous forms, you know, that work every muscle and every joint in the body, and they're real intense. Like 10 minutes of this is like an hour of aerobics. So when they're pushing me through some of these forms, always in the past, they'd reach a certain point where my heart would start pounding, and I'm just silently wishing that they would quit and let me stop, because it was intense. Well, now when I started doing that, I remember vividly the lesson where they're pushing me, and my heart kept like downshifting, and then my mind set that I didn't ever want them to stop. That was one of the greatest feelings physically, when I just felt like they couldn't wear me out. And when they finally stopped, I was a little disappointed. So my training went up to a very high level after that, and so did my pool game. So a lot of what I have in life came from that experience. And I didn't do the treatment much more after that. I had a vial, and I remember you keep it in the sunlight because that's what it likes, is sunlight. But when I looked at that vial, I could tell that there was something alive in that liquid, and it was spooky. So I ended up giving that vial to one of my doctor friends and didn't do it again for about 3 years, until I met my wife and found out she had cervical cancer. And that was the time that I really got into it, because I told her, I think I know a treatment that would cure this, but it's controversial and you're not going to be able to find any information on it except what I tell you. And there was a few things that I could show her. But what got her more than anything, I told her, if you do the treatment, I'll do it with you. And that's what we ended up doing. Now, that time, I did 15 treatments with her, and the results were extraordinary, especially for her. She was told she could never have any children and ended up having 2 kids. So, you know, I'm talking about something that's almost like a science fiction movie. However, it's true. I think you can probably still get it in Canada and Mexico. At the time, there was 14 countries that was allowing it. It's just this country isn't very favorable towards health. You can't make any money with health. You can only make money through disease and sickness, it seems. And that's just the way it is. However, when you know that, you can avoid the obstacles and eat right and stay away from toxic materials as much as you can. It's almost impossible right now in this world because it's such a poisonous environment by design, which such is life. Here we are. We got to make the best of it. Anyway, this is CJ. If you want to know more about my techniques, systems, and fundamentals that I use to become one of the best pool players, the ESPN World Champion, and Player of the Year, they named me, Pool and Billiard Magazine. www.masteringpocketbilliards.com is where you can find my high-level stuff. I'm getting ready to replace that website with a much better one, and if you get in now, it'll help you do the transition, because the prices are going to go up a little bit accordingly. But I got a lot of cool stuff that I'm going to share with people. Till next time, this is CJ. I'll talk with you soon.